Well, here we are again from our home to your home, and I trust this finds you all well. We thank God for His grace and His love to us and has kept us well through all of this, and we trust that you are the same. So just sit down. We're going to just chat a little bit together and share. We enjoyed a couple of days this week of good weather. I know we got the rain right now, but when there's a good weather, get out if you can. We got out and worked in the lawn a little bit and take walks, but just to get out in the sun makes all the difference in the world, it seems, about your attitude. And about today's lunch. We need to deal with that. Judy and Gary are wallpapering their bathroom, so she wasn't much help on this. So what we'll do is we'll just do what we did last week. That seemed to go so well. We made reservations in the same places, so that's what we'll do. And in fact, we had the largest group to go out for lunch that we've ever had. There must have been about 170, maybe 180 people all out to lunch last Sunday. Hey, here's an idea. Some of you mentioned how much you enjoyed Lee Hart doing the 8:30, some of the music from the 8:30 service. So give him a call. Let him know that you enjoyed it. Send him an email, whatever, and maybe they'll do that again sometime. It's oldies, but they're goodies, and we seem to enjoy them. Let me just share a couple things with you. One of them is a positive thing in light of the virus. One of the things that I wanted to do for the pastors that we're working with Barnabas is to visit their church, each one of them at some point. I haven't been able to do that, but now that they're online every Sunday, I get to hear them preach, get to see them. They're actually very good preachers and teachers, and so part of my goal is being fulfilled even during the virus. Now, watching them from my couch is not as good as going to their church, and we'll do that when that time comes. Some of you remember Joy Crimmins. Some of you have been around a long time, Troy Baptist days. She was a blind young lady and attended the church. Well, she passed away last week, and just share that information with you. I have an interesting story with her. We used to take groups to Israel and that part of the world, and she wanted to go real bad. And her mother wanted her to go, but she's blind. So we kept saying, what kind of a trip would this be for her? But anyhow, she ended up going. And we would go to a site and explain what was there, and she would visualize it in her mind, and she had a really good time. One incident took place. We were in Egypt, and Don, our son Don, took her for a walk that day, and they were coming back, but to come back, they had to cross a double-lane highway. And the cars, of course, if you've ever been to Cairo, the traffic is horrendous. And trying to get across is risking your life. Well, she had a white cane. She held it out. Of course, here in the States, the cars would stop. But not in Cairo. They just kept on coming. We thought it might be the end of Don and of Joy trying to get across that intersection. Hey, I got word from Bruce Woodman. I don't know how many of you know Bruce. He hasn't been around the church. He's a missionary. It's been a while since he's been with us. I met him back in the mid-'70s, I think. He has a radio ministry, an evangelistic ministry actually, called Impacto, and does crusades throughout Latin America. But he has a daily 15-minute radio program, and it reaches 22 countries and has 310 stations. He has the potential of reaching 75% of the Latino world. Has a great ministry. I traveled with him a couple of times and really enjoyed being with him and his team. And I just had gotten some information from him along that line and thought how wonderful that the virus can't stop the radio. And there are other radio stations as well that continue to share the gospel of Christ. Speaking of missions, this isn't quite missions, but it leads into the fact of there was this prospector who was out walking through the jungles, and he came across an Indian reservation, and very interesting that he would define that. And So he went in and he began to ask questions and look around. And finally he said, well, who's in charge here? And they said, well, the chief. And so they brought the chief over and he chatted with him and learning about the reservation. And he said to the chief, what do you do? What do you do for work? And oh, he said, I'm the preacher. I'm the minister here. He said, oh, really? He said, yeah. He said, well, that's interesting. In a place like this, how much do you make financially? He said, I get $5 a year. He said, oh, that's terrible. $5, that's all you get a year? He said, yes. He said, I can't believe it. That's just terrible. And the old Indian chief looked at him and said, me, terrible preacher. So I guess he got what he deserved. I got some good news for you as well today. During the Woodside services, the people are coming to Christ. And this is probably true on many of the churches that are doing the broadcasts now that way. In fact, if you listen to last Sunday's program with Pastor Chris, he told about a young lady that they made a contact with. I think it was the Lake Orion Church, and they made a contact with her and had the opportunity of leading her to Christ. And she was so excited, and they hung up the phone, and a few minutes later the phone rang, and it was the girl's mother. And they thought, oh, now we're in trouble. Her mother's going to be upset that this girl has trusted Christ. But the mother was so excited. She said, I've never seen my daughter like this before. I want to know what you told her, and I want the same experience that she's had. So they had the privilege of leading not only the young lady to Christ, but also leading her mother to Christ. Another point of good news, you're aware of the Next Step ministry at church. That is somebody that wants to learn more about Woodside and its ministries, its history, and its philosophy. They go to those classes, meet 4 weeks in a row. Well, they right now have 15 people in that class. Can you imagine? We don't even have a service in the church, and people are signing up and wanting to find out more about the church and wanting possibly to end up joining the church as well. Another interesting thing, and that is on the Woodside website. If you go on there, you'll find that there are 2 boxes. One box says, I have a need, and if you have a need, you check that box and then you describe what that need is. The other box is, I'm willing to fill a need. That is, I'm willing to do something to help if you want some help. And about 70% of the responses are in the box that says, I want to help in some way. And that is so amazing because they're living in the same virus culture that the rest of us are in, and yet so many of the people from our church are saying, what do you need? We're here and we want to help. I was checking on the finances for the church, and actually I think they're averaging right now about 84% of what needs to come in for the budget, and that is wonderful. And Pastor John, I was talking to Pastor John, and he said, tell the people how thankful we are for their generosity. And so let me encourage you, if you've been giving, but keep giving or start giving. You can do it online, or you can just put an envelope, put the address of the church, and it will get there. Now there's one more thing of good news, and that is, I think in the coming week, they're going to start putting the services on the radio as well. So those of our folks who don't have computers or don't know how to get on to see the service will be able to begin to listen to it on the radio. So some good stuff. People coming to Christ, people in the program for learning more about Woodside and perhaps wanting to join. The finances are not what they should be, but in light of everything are really, really good. And the radio's coming. Just a lot of good things are happening. So be encouraged. We're locked up in our homes and don't always know that God is really doing some really neat things. Now, the big question again is, are we going to get back together? We answered that last week. Yeah, we're going to get back together. The second question is the hard one. And that's the question is, when are we going to get back together? And it looks like we just are waiting for the federal government and the state government to give us some direction from their point of view, and then Woodside will seek to cooperate with that. They want to be a good testimony to the community, so they want to stay within the boundaries of the law. And it looks like it's going to take about 3 stages. Some of you know this already, but the problem, we don't know when those stages start. We don't know if we're in the first stage, or whether the first stage starts next month sometime. And then there'll be the opportunity probably for small groups to start meeting at some point in the second phase, or at some point. But anyhow, small groups in our homes can meet together. Then later, small groups for the church, maybe up to 250, 500 people. And it's going to mean probably adding some additional services. And then eventually there will be that time back to normal where we can all meet together. But it's going to take months. Don't get discouraged. Don't get impatient. It's coming. We're closer to the reality of the end of all this than we've ever been. So let's thank God that at least there's movement. There seems to be some direction now. There seems to be some light down the line. So let's thank God for that. Be sure again to pray for Pastor Chris and Pastor John and the staff, and that God will direct them, and then help us to be patient and confident, and trust them as they try to put all of this together in a meaningful way. Last week I talked to you from John chapter 20 and 21, and we talked about Jesus met his disciples exactly where they were, and he knew where they were. But to know where they were is one thing, but even better is that he went and met them there. We talked about meeting the disciples in the upper room, and meeting Mary Magdalene there by the tomb, and joining with the 2 disciples on their way to Emmaus, and then also the disciples as they came in from fishing, and he met with them. He knew where they were. He knew exactly. We said God knows exactly where we are. And he also knows not only where we are, but he wants to meet us where we are. And I was thinking, isn't it wonderful? We don't have to go to church to meet God. We don't have to go to Israel to meet God, or go to our class. Now, we do enjoy the fellowship, but we can meet with God and the Lord Jesus right where we are. You know, I was feeling sorry for some of the religions who teach their people you can only meet God at church. And now the church is closed, and they are very frustrated and anxious, and it's a great time for us to witness to the fact that Christ lives in us, according to Colossians 1:27. We don't have to go anywhere. Now I want to take a moment and just go back to those 2 chapters, and where we realize that God knows where we are, and he wants to come and meet us right where we are, but he knows exactly what we need. I thought this is really neat. Not only does he know where we are, not only does he want to meet us where we are, but he knows before he comes, he knows exactly what we need. I thought of the advertisement on television. When we go to the store and buy socks, you usually pick up a package that says, this will fit any foot between size 9 and 12. Well, this new company, if you've seen the advertisement, are making fun of that one size doesn't fit all, that they are beginning to make socks that are a size 6, you buy a size 6. If you want 7, you buy a size 7. And that one size doesn't really fit all comfortably. And so as I looked at those 2 chapters, I realized that Jesus didn't say the same thing to each of the groups. And I found it to be very interesting. When he met with the disciples in the upper room, what did he say? He said, peace. And the reason he said that is because they were afraid. It said they were afraid of the Jews. They were afraid of the authorities, and well, they might be. If they had been found, who knows what would have happened, since the authorities and the Jews are trying to do away with the fact that there was a resurrection. And if they could get these guys to admit they stole the body, that would solve their problem. So they were afraid. And so when Jesus arrived, he not only knew where they were, but he knew exactly what to say to them. He said, peace. And that's what he would say to you today, peace. Paul writes in 2 Timothy chapter 1, verse 7, that God has not given us a spirit of fear, but of power and of love and of self-control. And so that spirit of fear that you might have is not from God. And if it's not from God, you know where it came from. So ask God to take that anxiety and that fear away. And then he met with Mary Magdalene, right? And she had a broken heart. And so he didn't say peace to her. He let her. He just spoke her name, Mary, and she had lost hope, and now she had hope. You know, she would have been satisfied just to find the body. She said, where did they put his body? And here he was, not just a corpse, but the real living Christ. And remember, he said to her, Mary, and it said that she turned around and she saw Jesus. Maybe that's what you need to do today. Maybe you're looking the wrong direction. If you're looking at television for hope, you're not going to find it. If you're looking at the news broadcast for hope, you're not going to find it. You need to turn around and see Jesus. And then we also looked at the disciples. They were coming in from fishing on the shore, and you know, they were facing a haunting past failure. How would you like to have been them? And what did they need? They didn't need peace. They didn't need to hear Jesus call their name. What they needed was forgiveness. They must have been filled with guilt and frustration and anxiety. Here they were going to meet Jesus face to face after all that they had done in their desertion of Christ. And you know, sometimes it's interesting to note what Jesus doesn't say. We always look at what he says, but sometimes it's interesting to look and see what he doesn't say. And you know what he doesn't say there? He doesn't say to them, oh, how you guys disappointed me. And Peter, you didn't only disappoint me, you denied me. And Peter, James, and John, I took you on special trips, and you saw more and heard more than all the rest of them, and yet you deserted me too. I can't believe after 3 years of taking care of you guys that you did what you did to me. No, he didn't say that. You know what he said? Read it. It says, he said to them, come and have breakfast. Isn't that neat? He said, I've been waiting for you. And maybe that's what he's saying to you. Come on, you've got some real problems you're facing, some very difficult times. Maybe it's forgiveness you need, but his word to you is come. And you see, that morning, they didn't need to hear peace. They didn't need to hear their name. They need to hear those words, come. Isn't that great? That's what he says to you and to me. Come on. And that's what he said in Matthew 11:28. Come unto me, all you that labor and heavy laden, and I'll give you rest. Paul writes in Philippians 4:4 and says, don't be anxious about anything. Don't walk around in anxiety. And Peter says, casting all your care upon him. Why? Because he cares for you. When we don't do that, what we're saying, well, I don't think he cares about me, but you know he does. And his invitation to you and to me today is to come. Isn't that neat? In each situation, he knew their need, and he doesn't use the same phrase, just like for you and for me. Each of us are different. We're going through different times in our life individually, and he wants to meet you right where you are, and he knows exactly what you need to hear. You need to listen, and if you look at his word, he'll speak to you, I'm sure. Well, just wanted to share some time with you today. Mary and I love you. We miss you, and we pray for you collectively, and also for some of you individually. Now, we're going to give you another link that you can go on. My granddaughter, Erin, is Erin Puckett, loves children, and does a tremendous job with the boys and girls. And she's going to read to you the 23rd Psalm in a way that maybe you haven't seen it before or heard it. And I know you'll be blessed and encouraged by it. So you'll get that link and go on and listen to her. Okay? God bless you. Talk to you again next week.